Got nothing but reflection.
Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter. Almost forgot what I do here for Laughing Place. Lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at laughingplace.com. And this is episode number 135 of Who's the Bossk? We are going to be talking about the latest episode of the animated series Star Wars The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. And for that conversation, I have invited onto the show first-time guests from the From a Certain Point Askew podcast. It's Jay and Matt. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I listened to your show off and on when I can, and I've seen a lot of great guests. And so when you asked us, I was like, wow, okay.
more great guests. You guys are added to that list. Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate that, and thank you for coming on the show. We are recording live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel, and I've got my little comments window open here. So if you do have a comment, please comment along. We'll be happy to answer any questions or comments that you have. Let me get started here by asking Jay and Matt about their podcast. It's called From a Certain Point Askew. Guys, tell me a little bit about this show. How did you get started, and what is an average episode like for those who aren't already aware of it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister because people, of course, think of From a Certain Point of View. But it's a podcast. Jay and I have known each other for, maybe like 8 years, something like that. And so we have, shared our love of Star Wars a long time ago, and we had talked about wanting to do something with that for a long time. We would do these little one-off recordings for stuff, but in the end, we decided, why don't we just make a full-on podcast about it? And he and I are both very casual about it. We are certainly not the most learned Star Wars fans out there. We've had a running
60%.
joke. Yeah. We started out saying we knew 40% knowledge. Now we think we've upped it to 60%. So weekly show, just kind of casual. We usually talk about, the current shows going on. We do have some listener involvement stuff as well with a question of the week we send out, which got a lot of play this week. And then also have people send us emails with our mailbag. And yeah, just a fun, casual show, just trying to have fun with it, not taking it too seriously, or definitely don't take ourselves too seriously.
Now I have to ask, what was the question of the week that got a lot of engagement?
Well, so I threw out how, after the Mandalorian trailer had come out, what possibly would be the way, if at all, that they would reference how Cara Dune is no longer on the show. And there was a lot of heated debate on that topic. A lot of people had fun with it, made some really hilarious comments, which we've shared on our recording, which we just did, which will go out tomorrow. Couldn't even get to them all. There were so many. It was the biggest response we ever got to a question of the week. But of course, some people
could have had its own episode, just like that topic. Yeah. We could have filled an hour.
Yeah, for sure. And there were a lot of people who were like, "Who cares?" But it generated a lot of interest, which is what we're trying to do.
I think I said this on Twitter, but I went to reply with a jokey Simpsons reference, and somebody had already put it up there, which I was very proud to see fellow Simpsons fans in the Star Wars community. So yeah, check that out. When is the episode going out?
That'll drop to later tonight or tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I promised my coworker Kyle, when I told him the name of your podcast, and I promised I would ask this question to you guys, is From a Certain Point Askew in any way a Kevin Smith reference?
Zing, yes. I don't know if you know that, Matt. We never talked about that, but that was like I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, so it just kind of, we were throwing names back and forth one day, and the Askew just kind of fit to me, so I threw it out there, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. We used to have another co-host, Cole, was one of my neighbors, so he did it with us, and there were 3 of us in the chat room going back. I don't remember what some of the other names we were kind of selling on, but we all kind of settled on that one pretty quickly.
Yeah, we bounced it around a lot. Actually, this is the first time I've learned of that. I did not know that was a Kevin Smith
I didn't
reference.
even think like that had to be like discussed. Like it just was. Askew is kind of synonymous with Kevin Smith, and
There you go.
I don't know. I mean, the reason I podcast is originally because of him.
Okay, so yeah, so it came from that, and then Jay had come up with like an idea for our a logo, kind of a rip-off version of the Star Wars logo to a degree, which we used to make T-shirts and stuff for, and then we got the notice that we were not allowed to do that anymore.
Cease and desist.
Oh wow, that's fun. That's always fun to get a cease and desist. Well, I'm going to check out the show for sure. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's do something called the 5 Star Wars questions. And this is where we get to know our guests, kind of the baseline for our guests' Star Wars fandom. Are you guys ready for this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I couldn't be more ready.
Couldn't be more ready. Okay, excellent. So let's go with number 1 of the 5 Star Wars questions. This is called, what is your earliest Star Wars memory? And we'll start with you, Matt, if you wouldn't mind. What's your earliest Star Wars memory?
Sure. So I'm old, and I went to the original release of Star Wars when it came out in 1977. It was called Star Wars then, of course. I don't remember that because I was only like not quite 3, but they did a number of re-releases the next year or two.
Yeah.
I remember that. So I have this vague memory of sitting there in the theater and having to pee so bad. And it was it was the Obi-Wan Kenobi scene where he goes to shut down the tractor beam. And I was like, okay, I know what happens here.
There's plenty of time to go get a bathroom break there at the theater.
Right. So I had to hightail it over there, go to the bathroom, and come back to finish watching.
He's still out on that podium.
Right. But yeah, those are my early memories is seeing it originally in the theater, standing in line for the replays, and we had all the, the gear, all the bed sheets and the action figures and all that stuff. So it was just a huge part of my upbringing.
Awesome. The Obi-Wan shutting down the tractor beam is around the same time in the movie as the trash compactor sequence. So I'm guessing maybe it was the splashing around the Dianoga kind of going up and down in the gross garbage water that maybe you had to pee.
It could have been, yeah.
Yeah, could be. Okay. What about you, Jay? Earliest Star Wars memory?
The one that comes to mind is I think just going to see Return of the Jedi in the theater. I'm a little bit younger. I want to say I'd seen one of them before, but the one that sticks out most to me is seeing Return of the Jedi and the Rancor. Scared the shit out of me as a kid. The crap out of me as a kid. It was like, what was I? It was 83, so I'd have been 5, 6, maybe one of the first movies that I went to, and just seeing it on the massive screen and this monster, like, yeah, that was I was in after that. It was everything. I loved, like, I religiously watched these movies. VHS, burnt out tapes.
Awesome. So you guys have been big fans since childhood. That's fantastic.
But not
what
as
would you
as you though? Good Lord, what's going on with your wall?
Just that's a small fraction of the amount of junk that I have around. But
wow.
Let's get into your adulthood now. What would you say as an adult nowadays is your current favorite Star Wars movie or TV show? And we'll start with Jay this time, and why?
It's hard to, I would say Mandalorian is something special. I think I really like everything they're doing with that, and I was not looking forward to Andor, but Andor blew me away. The writing, everything about that show. So I don't know if it's my favorite because it's not. Andor you'll go back and watch every once in a while to appreciate the writing and the direction and the character work. But like Mandalorian is just fun. Like you just go into that and you have a good time. And to me, Mandalorian reminds me of watching Star Wars as a kid.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I really do. I did enjoy Andor quite a bit. I would say, I've said this before, it's probably technically the best Star Wars show so far, but I do prefer The Mandalorian because it feels closer to the spirit of what Star Wars was from the beginning. How about you, Matt? Favorite Star Wars movie or TV show?
Attack of the Clones.
Definitely not Attack of the Clones. This is an impossible question to answer, by the way. Just want to point that out, Mike. If I'm going to choose, I'm going to choose one of each, if that's okay. I mean, movie wise, a lot of people default to Empire, and I would be in that boat. I loved Empire so much. I mean, I think a lot of people talk about A New Hope as being kind of boring at times, but that's like a warm blanket to me having that thing on TV. So those first two are just that's kind of home to me when it comes to Star Wars. And when it comes to the series, of course I love Mandalorian, but I really was looking forward to Andor, and it absolutely knocked it out of the park for me. So that's been my favorite series so far.
Sweet. So yeah, when people say A New Hope is boring, that always strikes me as odd, because I feel like when that movie came out, it would have been described as anything but boring.
Right.
I mean, it does kind of start off in medias res, and then it goes down to the deserts of Tatooine, where people are kind of wandering around for a little while. But that's just the progression of a story, you know, and it picks up, and you get a lot of action in the end. I guess it's just the difference in between how movies were made back then and how they're made now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call that movie boring, but okay. Number 3, who is your favorite Star Wars character and why? So let's start with Matt this time.
Would you like me to say Bossk, Mike?
I would like you to say whoever is your favorite Star Wars character.
This is another very, very difficult one to answer. I mean, if I could only pick one, I'd probably go. Asajj Ventress is good. That might be yours. Or actually, yours is probably Mon Mothma, but I'm gonna leave that for you.
Yeah, but that's for a different podcast.
Definitely.
We'll say that for ours.
It's hard to beat Han. I mean, in the end, it's played by, you know, one of the best actors in the whole series. He's just so iconic. Every scene he's in, he kind of steals. It's hard to beat him when it comes to you know, which character I would choose.
Awesome. How about you, Jay?
The same. Harrison Ford's been my favorite actor since a kid. Star Wars, everything he's ever done, and when he came back for The Force Awakens, like, I love that he fell right into those shoes again when he said he wouldn't. You know, he was fantastic in it. I've always enjoyed everything he's done, and as much as I like Star Wars, to me has always been Jedis and lightsabers and stuff, but the character, the quips he has, just like the cocksure attitude, I've always just really taken to Han Solo. Who doesn't want a Millennium Falcon? Like,
well, yeah,
right.
Get the ship.
Yeah.
Agreed. But Han to me always represented like the audience's point of view, kind of entering into this world, because you know, as a viewer or as somebody living in the real world, we're also kind of skeptical of this whole idea of the Jedi and the Force. And then as we see more evidence that all that stuff is real, by the time we get to The Force Awakens, we can say, you know, it's true, all of it. So yeah, great choice. I love Han. I think I said that myself when I answered these questions. So let's get to number 4 of the 5 Star Wars questions. If you happen to live in the fictional Star Wars universe, where do you think you would fit in? What faction would you belong to? And the examples that I always list are the Jedi Order, the Sith, the Rebel Alliance, the Empire, the Bounty Hunters, the scum and villainy hanging out in the cantina, or anything else you can come up with. Let's start with Jay. What do you think? Where would you fit in the Star Wars universe?
I want to do this a little differently. I'm going to answer for Matt. Matt would be an ISB officer. He would be doing spreadsheets. He would just like nothing but white and just ticking people off, like from the moment he wakes up till he's that guy. What's his name? You know the names. I'm just
Major Portagaz would love my work.
Get your reports in.
Always
like you would just and then, you know, you'd have no luck with Deirdre though, just none.
No.
as much as you're rooting against the ISB and Andor, you do feel like if Major Portagaz complimented you on your work, you would feel amazing. Like, that would be the best feeling in the world if he liked what you were doing. Right. Matt, what do you think Jay would be doing if he were in Star Wars?
That's a good question. I don't think he's got quite the discipline of a Jedi, so I think that's out.
No. I didn't get kicked out of school day one.
I don't. I mean, for myself and you, Jay, I would say it would be great to be kind of that scum and villainy that hangs out at the cantina, but that's a rough lifestyle to maintain over the course of your life. It's a short-lived deal. So I think you're Rebel Alliance all the way. I'm just trying to figure out where you fit in. I think you and I would both be, I mean, if I'm not doing ISB, I think we would both be kind of behind the scenes Rebel Alliance guys. You know, like I think I would probably be like managing Mon Mothma's office or something. That's what I would do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'd be like one of those guys on the glass window, like putting dots on there's the ship.
Right. Yeah. You have the headset. Yeah. I can see that.
Writing home, telling my parents, like, I'm doing good.
That would be a fun gig, I think. Okay, the fifth and final of the 5 Star Wars questions is called Impression or Possession. This is where my guests can choose to either do a Star Wars impression or simply opt out and tell me about a favorite Star Wars possession they may own. So let's start with Matt. Matt, impression or possession? What do you think?
There's an ongoing joke on our show where I would try to do an impression at the beginning of the show, and they were always really terrible.
Or do not. There is no try. He's the Michael Winslow of impressions for Star Wars.
Yes, so I don't know what I would do. I'll do one real quick. Here you go.
Okay.
Wop wop wow. There you go. There's my BB-8.
I love it. Well, that's going to factor into our discussion later on, because one of the voices of BB-8 was Ben Schwartz.
Yeah,
who was in this week's episode of the Bad Batch. So yeah, that's fantastic.
I thought about doing Zero. I thought about doing Zero the Hutt again, because I did that on our show.
I thought you would. I really did.
It's a tough one to pull off.
How about you, Jay? Impression or possession?
I'll say possession, and probably my lightsaber back there. We got a buddy who builds lightsabers, and I love that thing.
Awesome.
And if you're Matt, I'm surprised Matt didn't talk about lightsaber being his favorite, because when the power goes out, he uses it as a walking nightlight.
Yes, when we had an ice storm a couple of years ago, and I lost our power for 5 days, and so I also got a lightsaber from the same guy, Darth Flamingus.
Shout out, Dave.
And I used it. We used it in the bathroom. So if you had to go to the bathroom, you turn the lightsaber on so you could see in there while you're going to the bathroom.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's one of my favorite little used functions of a lightsaber. But often you'll see Jedi, if they enter into a dark cave or something, they'll turn on their lightsaber to guide the way. So,
right, exactly.
That's a good real world use for a lightsaber that works out. So let's before we move on here, I want to acknowledge some of the comments we've gotten. So I'm sure you know this person, Scarif Surf Club, seems like they're a fan of you guys. They say,
nailed it.
I believe Matt is a big fan of Toro Calican from The Mandalorian.
Remember when we talked about swearing earlier, Mike? This would be the way to get me to swear. Toro Calican is my least favorite character of all time.
Oh, he writes fan fiction about him. It gets real good. Not
a fan of Toro Calican.
I enjoyed that character because I feel like it was a commentary on almost kind of the Nepo baby conversation. If you guys have been paying attention, it's like a kid who grew up and had all the access to money and resources and bought all this fancy new equipment, but he didn't have any of the experience to go along with it. So he wasn't very good at what he was trying to do. Yeah. That's why I enjoyed that character as this little kind of a satire.
It's an interesting outlook on that character.
And then let's say hi to Sonia, who said, Sonia, good morning. Hello. Hi. How are you?
Hello.
Thank you for watching and listening.
Yeah.
And then Panagram. Do we know this person?
I don't know.
Bossk from SWBF2. What do you think that stands for?
Battlefront 2?
An Australian drill band or something?
It's Battlefront. It's the character in Battlefront 2, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, excellent. Thank you for commenting there in the chat. Let's get into some Star Wars headlines for this week. And as you guys mentioned earlier, we are talking about the Mandalorian. We got some big news about the Mandalorian coming up. The new season starts March 1st on Disney Plus, and we got a final trailer, or a new trailer, should say, for the Mandalorian season 3, as well as a poster and the list of directors for this year's season of the Mandalorian. What did you guys think of the trailer? Now, you said you had recorded an episode of your own show talking about the Mando trailer. So give me some of the topics that you guys covered when you talked about the trailer.
Go ahead, Jay.
Matt wasn't impressed at all. He talked about probably the worst season possible.
No, that is not true. There was a lot there. There were some things we had seen before that were kind of just expanded upon a little bit, but there was some really cool stuff. Clearly, there's a big focus of him going back to Mandalore and trying to redeem himself for removing his helmet twice. And so that's going to be a big plot point. So that looks like that'll be interesting. And all those different Mandalorian they had lined up with him. I thought that was cool. I'm interested to see how that plays out. I like what Grief Cargo's done with the place. Really cleaned up Navarro. Looks nice. Although it looks like it's going to be totally trashed when the Mandalorians come in and fight those Nikto Raiders or whoever those people are. So that's going to be a bummer for him.
I hope the fight scene is shot just as good as the scene in the Book of Boba Fett.
Which one?
The scooter chase scene.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the train scene. The train scene was awesome.
Yeah.
The Lawrence Arabia thing was great. Yeah, well, we got Dr. Pershing, which I'm anxious to see exactly what they do with that. We talked about that as far as like, the getting into the cloning thing and all that stuff. What's he going to do? What planet is he on? Is it, is it Coruscant? Is it what's the other one? Hosnian Prime. Trying to kind of figure that stuff out. I know Moff Gideon.
Right.
Yeah.
We know he's going to be there somewhere.
Well, when we last saw Moff Gideon,
he was for a few weeks. I wonder if because there's really no point in bringing him in right away, right?
Well,
could be.
By the end of season 2, he's in captivity, right? Like our heroes have captured Moff Gideon. So, do we expect it to pick up right at that point, and he's still being held captive by the good guys?
I think he's going to be sprung somehow. I don't know if it's a major character helping spring him or what, but he's got to get away and cause all sorts of havoc. He in interviews, I believe he said that he's got a pretty significant role in season 3. So I think that's coming. Yeah,
that wouldn't surprise me if Giancarlo has a bigger role this season. How about the poster that came out? What did you guys think of? It's not too much to say about the poster. It's just Mando holding Grogu and flying around on his jetpack, right?
I noticed there's no Darksaber.
Darksaber.
So okay. I was looking at it. It almost looks like maybe you could see the handle of the Darksaber on his right hip. I'm not sure if that's what that is or not. I looked a little closer at it. I enhanced. Okay. It looked like it might be the handle of the Darksaber. I'm not sure. But also, I don't remember because we both need to, Jay and I both need to rewatch season 2 especially, but just because we're going to do a preview episode of The Mandalorian coming up. What happened to his Beskar spear? Did he lose that? Do you guys remember?
He melted that down, right?
Did he?
Isn't that what he gave up in Book of Boba Fett? Isn't that what he gave up to make
chainmail?
He makes the chainmail out of this large Beskar spear. So
okay, that's right.
Somewhere she's holding out on a large chunk of Beskar for herself. It's like 30% for you, 70 for me.
It goes to the foundling.
You're no longer part of the group. Get out of here.
That's right. I forgot about that. I just hope he restocked the whistling birds because those things come in handy quite a lot. So.
I know what I wanted to ask you about the trailer. The droid bar. What's going on there? First of all, I don't think we saw on if you go back to Mandalorian season 1 or 2 where he goes to the Mos Eisley cantina and there's a droid bartender, but we haven't seen a bar that's entirely populated by droids. What do you guys think is the deal here?
I mean, they're clear that they're not going to welcome humans and aliens, right? They're going to say, we don't want your kind here. I assume that there's going to be the blowback. I don't know what that's supposed to be. It could just be a fun little bit they inserted just for our entertainment, and it's not going to play any major role. It looked like there was a shot right before that where Mando's talking to another droid about something, and then it shows that shot. So I'm not sure how it all leads into that, but I like almost blew snot when I saw that pop up in the trailer. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is hilarious. They've got battle droids in there. It looked like a guy who looked like AP5 from Rebels was in there. It was pretty cool. The
other thing that popped out at me is we get a shot of Carson Teva, the New Republic. What is he, like a marshal? And he's talking to somebody about how, there's a problem brewing in the galaxy, and if you ignore it too long, it's not going to be possible to fight it anymore. And then it cuts to a reaction shot of Mando, but it's an entirely different location because we know that shot takes place on Mandalore in the throne room. He's talking to Bo-Katan, right? So who do you guys think that Carson Teva is talking to in the New Republic? My guess was Mon Mothma. I don't know. Do you think it's possible that Mon Mothma might show up in Mando season 3?
Ooh.
I think it is because we really don't know where she is in this timeline, right?
But she is the Chancellor of the New Republic, right?
She is. Yeah, and in the books,
it seems kind of like a large role, like for him. I don't know how important he is to be in a hallway or wherever talking to her, but it would be nice to see her pop up. But I mean, he's definitely foreshadowing, like what the beginnings of the First Order, or maybe something that Moff Gideon's up to. I mean, there's the shot that they took out of the trailer that's in the Disney Plus that shows the Star Destroyer even being dismantled or put together. So maybe that's something that, he's aware that, the Empire is not, down and out. He's always policing the galaxy, so he's got to be seeing stuff.
Yeah, he's clearly seen some things, and he's putting pieces together. That's what it looks like. I didn't think about the fact that he could be talking to Mon. That would be interesting.
He's talking to Cara Dune,
but she never responds.
Yeah, Cara Dune is always slightly off screen.
Just off, season. Yeah.
From now on, it's just by the first unit director. It's just like the first camera shot that's gonna. They'll never show her. It's just you're looking through her eyeballs.
It's going to be the Peanuts parents.
So let's get into the directors for season 3 of The Mandalorian. Rick Famuyiwa, obviously, he's back from the previous 2 seasons. Some of my favorite episodes have been directed by Rick Famuyiwa, so excited to have him back again. Then we've got Rachel Morrison, who was the cinematographer for Black Panther, Marvel Studios movie. And she also worked on Dope, the Rick Famuyiwa movie, and Fruitvale Station, which was directed by Black Panther director whose name is
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler. Thank you.
I got one.
Thank you very much. So then we've got Lee Isaac Chung, who directed the acclaimed and Oscar-nominated film Minari, which I really liked a couple years ago. So that could be an interesting one. Not an action movie by any stretch. So curious to see what he does with The Mandalorian. And then Carl,
an action movie coming out.
Does he?
Yeah, I believe we were talking about this when we recorded. I believe he's the one that just signed on to direct Twisters,
the sequel.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay,
was that a cow again? That's all I got.
Interesting. Okay, so also Carl Weathers is back directing another episode. Peter Ramsey, who did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, is going to be directing an episode, so that should be pretty cool. And then Bryce Dallas Howard, who's becoming a fan favorite among the directors,
awesome.
is returning again. Any other thoughts that you guys have about this list?
No, I mean, we did comment on the fact that it's interesting that we call them Favloni, but Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are not directing any episodes because they have in the past. So that was kind of interesting. But I mean, like Jay mentioned on our show, it's, obviously Filoni's probably heavily focused on Ahsoka at the moment. And so he was not maybe able to direct, but just executive produce instead. So I just thought that was interesting since Favreau writes it all. I thought maybe he might direct some as well, but it looks like it's not going to be the case.
Well, I would say that we have a list of 6 names and there are 8 episodes. So either somebody's doubling up or they haven't given us the full list of names yet.
Possible. Right? Yeah. I would think, I bet you Famuyiwa directs more than one.
That wouldn't surprise me. He has done that before.
Hopefully Bryce Dallas.
Yeah, that would be nice. That'd be welcome.
Yeah. I really like the episode she does.
She did the one wasn't she the one who directed the Mando episode of Book of Boba, right?
Correct. Return of the Mandalorian. Yes. Right. Okay. That's anything else you guys want to say about Mando season 3 coming up before we move on?
Just can't wait. It looks so good. It's been so long. I mean, granted, we got that piece in Book of Boba, but I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen that series. So I just can't wait to see all those characters that live in that world back again. I'm pumped.
I've seen this joke a few times. I know I made it myself, but I think it would be fun if they devoted an episode or 2 of The Mandalorian season 3 to Boba Fett and Fennec Shan. Do you
get it back?
Do you think we'll at least see those characters in Mando season 3?
We were kind of alluding to this with the episode of the fireworks and everything that they show in the trailer. It looks like that's Tatooine. If they're on Tatooine, why is he not seeing Boba Fett? Right. So I would guess, and maybe we'll get a little bit of like
Cobb Vanth.
Yes, Cobb Vanth coming out of the back to tube, or as we like to call it, the flashback to tube. So he's feeling better now, and we'll, that's going to touch it. And really, like I'm hoping for a second season of Book of Boba Fett. I mean, I think they know what didn't work and where they could pick up, but that's a character that I think for anything they need to redeem it a little bit with the audience.
Well, and I'm always up for more Fennec Shand. I think her character is fantastic. So I could see her bouncing around and being used in another series quite a bit. I don't think they're going to be in it a lot because it looks like it's pretty expansive this season. Like he's going all over the place. So if we do see Boba Fett and Fennec, I'm guessing it's only maybe that one episode.
What would be awesome if the best episode is the Boba Fett episode? Just comes in like Mando does in his series and just takes over. Those pretty teeth and
that's right. Those wonderful teeth.
That would be great. And like you, I am also hoping we get a second season of the book of Boba Fett. And I was wondering, actually, like, because the first season of Book of Boba Fett got kind of announced or teased at the end of the previous season of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Maybe this season of The Mandalorian will end with a tease for season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. I think that would be a cool way to do it. Let's move on in Star Wars headlines for this week. We had some new comic books coming out from Marvel. Han Solo and Chewbacca #9 and Star Wars Bounty Hunters #30. I wrote reviews of both of these comics up at laughingplace.com. How about you guys? Are you keeping up with the Star Wars comics these days?
I am not. I've never really read the comics very much. I've actually tried to get it more, especially since we've been doing this podcast, try to get more into the books.
Okay.
So like right now I went back and I'm reading the Heir of the Empire trilogy. And getting into that, I've tried to dip into High Republic. I've been kind of bouncing all over the place trying to get those stories because they're fantastic. They give great context to all these characters that we, only maybe see little snippets of and stuff in series and movies. So that's where I've been getting a lot of my reading done. I haven't really jumped into the comic world very much.
Yeah, there's just so much content. It is difficult to keep up with the comics, especially these days. There can be up to like 4 and 5 new issues of the Star Wars comics every week. But I will say these 2 issues that came out this week, I really enjoyed both of them. Bounty Hunters has been kind of hit or miss for me, so this was an especially good issue of Bounty Hunters. And then Han Solo and Chewbacca actually started tying into some of the other larger story arcs that are going on in the other Star Wars comics. I would really recommend checking out both of these issues. And let's get on with some other Star Wars headlines. There's some new jewelry and bracelets coming from companies like Enso rings and RockLove jewelry, and we've got posts about both of those items on laughingplace.com. Is that anything that was on your radar, guys? Were you looking at any of these jewelry announcements? There's Padme and Anakin jewelry from RockLove and bracelets from Enso rings. Did you check that out at all?
When I saw that in your doc,
rings, but he won't answer me.
You want to get matching rings? I thought the bracelets were kind of cool. It's like that Orabesh or whatever, how you pronounce that, font or text.
Are they
or whatever.
flat bracelets?
No, they're not. They're not. But then when I saw your list that you shared and it said RockLove, Padme, and Anakin jewelry, I was like, so is there a choker for Padme? But
oh.
I love it. No, but you've got the little Japor snippet from the Phantom Menace. I know is one of the necklaces that you can get. Okay. But you can find out more about that on laughingplace.com. Like I mentioned, in addition to that, there's a new Imperial Stormtrooper helmet coming from Denuo Novo, our friends over there at the they make high-end costuming replicas. And I'm actually surprised that they haven't done an Imperial Stormtrooper before, because they've done a bunch of different Star Wars helmets, and I know some apparel and armor and stuff like that. So definitely check them out. I believe it's denuonovo.com. And then let's get into some non-Star Wars Lucasfilm news, because they did announce a new behind-the-scenes special for the Willow sequel series that recently ended on Disney Plus. And then next week we're going to be getting Willow Behind the Magic, which is a behind the scenes look at how Willow was made. Did you guys watch Willow, the series?
No, I think it looks great. Haven't been able to sound with it. I want to watch with the kids, but I want to show them the movie first. But I've heard pretty good things about it.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, so I watched Willow, the movie, back when it came out.
Right.
Because I'm old. And in fact, I remember going to the theater. When did that movie come out? Like 85 or
88.
87?
88. Well, the reason I say 85 probably is because I swear for 2+ years, when you'd go to the theater, it would say Willow coming.
Yeah.
And it was so far in advance. It was like, why are they, promoting this right now? It's so crazy. But I remember really liking it. Like, I always liked Val Kilmer. I kind of had a big crush on Joanne Whalley, became his wife. But I have not had a chance to sit down and watch this series.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to sit down and watch it with my kids and see if they'd enjoy it. But it looks fantastic. And Jay and I are total suckers for these behind the scenes shows. Like they've done before for Mando and all these different shows and Book of Boba. And it's just so cool to see how the sausage is made. We love those shows.
Yeah, I always enjoy that kind of thing as well. The fun thing about this particular special, though, if you watch the trailer that came out a day or two ago, you'll see that it almost looks like a mockumentary.
Cool.
That they're being very playful about it.
That'd be fun.
I don't know if you guys ever saw that sitcom called Life's Too Short, starring Warwick Davis. It was on HBO. It was a Ricky Gervais produced show.
Yeah.
And Warwick Davis kind of played a heightened version of himself where he was kind of a jerk. So I think this is kind of in the same spirit of that. And I really like that kind of thing. So I am looking forward to this. That's coming to Disney Plus next week on January 25th. So check that out. Really quickly, I got some news before we started recording that I wanted to mention here. A voice actor named Earl Bowen passed away, and I knew him from the Monkey Island games from LucasArts, a big part of my adolescence. So I just wanted to say, rest in peace to Earl Bowen. Did you guys grow up on the LucasArts adventure games or any of the Lucasfilm games releases?
I played them. I don't remember. I remember the Monkey Island games, but I couldn't tell you anything about them now. Just like I remember visually some of the stuff, and they were like kind of ahead of their time for the day.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the doctor from the Terminator movies.
Yeah, he was also a live action actor and played that role in I think Terminator 1 through 3.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Terminator was a huge movie for me, and he's so good in it. He's like so bored, like like kind of half interviewing Kyle Reese. He's hilarious in that movie.
Yeah, so sorry to hear that news, to hear that Earl Bowen passed away, but I'll always remember him as Ghost Pirate LeChuck or Zombie Pirate LeChuck from the later games in the Secret of Monkey Island franchise. So if you haven't played those games, highly recommended. Go back. They're available for everything now. You can play the old games on current consoles. Also in non-Star Wars in non-Star Wars Lucasfilm news, I did an interview with the Hasbro Indiana Jones team that are making the toys both for the upcoming new movie, The Dial of Destiny, and the original 3 Indiana Jones films. And I think they're going to have some stuff coming out of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as well, unless they're completely ignoring that one. But anyway, I talked to they may, who knows? I talked to the Indiana Jones team over at Hasbro about all this new stuff that's coming up. And I got like 4 or 5 questions in during this roundtable style interview. So I'm going to put those clips in right here. If you're watching this live on YouTube, you're not going to hear them. But if you listen to the audio of this podcast later on, I'm going to drop those clips in right here. And that was my interview with the Hasbro Indiana Jones teams. But I should ask you guys, how are you feeling about this new Indiana Jones film? Are you Indiana Jones fans as well? Are you excited for the new movie?
Go ahead.
No. Like I said, Harrison Ford is one of my favorite actors, but I don't think he ever landed the Indy role. Like there's something about it. I still to this day think Tom Selleck should have been.
Exactly. I was gonna say should go with Tom Selleck.
It looks absolutely amazing. I was a little worried when Spielberg signed off and the director signed on to do it, but I mean he captured like everything you want him to, and I mean for what was he 80 pushing 80, and he still can play the role. He looks like he can land a punch, and if you remember a couple years ago, don't think he can't, because Blade Runner 2049, there's that one still of him just putting a hard one on Ryan Gosling, and he's like ooh. Oh, I love it.
And there is no louder punch sound effect in cinema history than Indiana Jones landing a punch on a Nazi.
Yep.
How did they make that noise? I want to say it was like a bat hitting a head of lettuce or something.
It sounds like it. It's so loud. It is not realistic, but it makes for good cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved Indiana Jones, of course. Raiders is just a phenomenal movie for me. And I like the first 3. So Crystal Skull has always kind of been a weird one for me, because we watched the movie and whatever that was, like 2008 or something, had a kid shortly after. So I didn't go to the movies for a long time. So for the longest time,
that was the last movie.
Crystal Skull was the last movie I saw for like 2 years or something in the theater, 2+ years. And I was like, boy, it's tough to sit with that one, because it just didn't land for me at all. I did not enjoy that movie. But I'm excited to see what they do with 5 and kind of finish up the character. It's always good to see her.
The last shot where he pulls the whip out on the table of everything, like he's whipping everybody, and all of a sudden they pull out guns and start shooting them, and he like hides. I love that. I was like, oh, it looks fun.
It looks a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally agreed. I'm really psyched for this movie, and very curious to see kind of what the fresh blood of James Mangold as the director is bringing to the franchise. What's that?
I said, that's his name. There's something wrong with my brain when I podcast. Names go away.
Okay. No, me too. I will totally blank on names as well. And Jay, I just want to say I really appreciate your dry sense of humor, because if you hadn't continued talking, I totally would have believed what you said about Tom Selleck. Like I was like, oh wow, that's the first time I've heard somebody say that Harrison Ford did not nail the role of Indiana Jones. Okay, that's going to bring us to the main topic for this week's episode of Who's the Bossk. It's The Bad Batch, the animated series from Lucasfilm, being released weekly on Disney Plus. This week's episode was called Faster. But before we get into this week's episode, I want to ask Jay and Matt, what are your histories? What are your personal histories with The Bad Batch? Did you enjoy the first season? And what did you think of these previous 3 episodes of the second season before we get into the new one? What do you think, guys?
Oh, you want me to go? Okay. I'll go.
Sorry, I should really be assigning who should talk first.
When we talk to each other every week, we should have this down, you would think. Okay. Go ahead, Jay.
I would say I've enjoyed it. I don't remember what my feelings were going into The Bad Batch originally, but we had just like covered so much animation in the months before. I mean, I remember even when we covered it this time, like we went back and watched the season. It's an amazing show. I love the characters. There's some complaining that we did about the growth of some of them, and it seems like they're fixing that this season. But the one complaint I have right now is it just seems more mission oriented again, and we're not really delving into the story part of the show, progressing the narrative for them. So I mean, that's my only thing. I went into this like I kind of mocked this episode. I watched it twice. I enjoyed it more, but the first time I watched it, I thought like I was in some fever dream for Vin Diesel, where like if he were to write and direct a Star Wars, it would have been this. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. I like how they seem to have threads that are going through the animation and the live action, and everything's sort of feeding off of each other. And I like those threads, and I want a little bit more of that. But it seems like they're waiting a few episodes before they get into that again.
Well, 16 episodes a season, it's just a lot for this
era
of television. I feel like, especially on streaming services like Disney Plus or Netflix, we tend to get like 8-10 episode seasons max. 16 just seems like a lot. That's really a throwback to an earlier era of television where you had like 22 episodes a season, and they were all very self-contained. Occasionally you would get a 2-parter here and there, but it just feels like so much time and space to fill. So you're gonna have some episodes that don't feel as connected to the ongoing storyline as others do. What about you, Matt? What are your thoughts on The Bad Batch overall before we talk about this week's episode?
Yeah, so going back a little bit to the Clone Wars and when that came out, my older son, who on the show we refer to as the consultant, because he would always tell me little bits about what happened he would remind me of things that happened in the Clone Wars. And that series didn't land with me at the time. And it was really Rebels where I picked up on animation Star Wars and really was like, this feels natural to me. Like this is right in that era that I, really became a fan in. So this makes sense. And then we went back and watched the Clone Wars. And I mean, it's an up and down ride through the Clone Wars, especially the first couple seasons. They're kind of trying to find their footing, and the animation is a bit weird at times, and the dialogue is a little weird at times, which it's been the case of Star Wars at times, throughout. But once we got deeper into Clone Wars, you get so much more context on these characters, and it really sets up what you see later. And so we really started to enjoy it, and we reviewed it on this show, went through like season by season. When it came time for The Bad Batch to come out, I thought they're going to make a whole show about just this crew, and I thought, I don't know if that's going to work. But when watching season 1, like Jay said, I mean, they've done it so well. The like what Kevin Kiner's done with the music is so awesome. The visuals are so good, like, because piggybacking on how great the visuals were for season 7 of Clone Wars, The Bad Batch just kind of picked up from there and gone forward. So visually and from an audio perspective, it sounds so great. And I just, like Jay said too, it really crosses over a lot to all the other live action stuff we're seeing. So it keeps you interested and it keeps you engaged the whole time. So I've really enjoyed it. There are certainly not every episode hits. There are certainly ones where you're like, but like you said, there's just so many episodes. You have to fill out those 16 episodes. And sometimes it's just little bits of character development you're getting for that one episode, or they're just trying to have fun. You know, it is an animated show. Kids are going to enjoy certain aspects of it that maybe adults don't. And so I think they're kind of playing, to both sides of that.
This felt like it was like the episode where they want to sell toys. Like, I'm just waiting for the commercial to come out where it shows like an 8-year-old with the racetrack and cars, and he's trying to sell it to you. Like, it just, to me, I was like, but we talked about this a little bit. Like, you got to have the episode for the kids too. So I get where they were coming from, and they landed a few things they needed to, for tech. So like overall, it wasn't a terrible episode, but it was just filler to me.
On the heels of what we got in episode 3, and I listened to your show last week, Mike, and you guys breaking that down. That's the stuff that really grabs on to me. Is I love watching the development and the kind of operational stuff for the Empire and how they operated, because that's just it's interesting to me. And so to see all that stuff with Cody and Crosshair and Rampart, hopefully we'll die sometime soon. But that was so good and dark. And so I think this episode was kind of trying to bring it back up a little bit, make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, going back a little bit to what you were saying about the Clone Wars, Matt, I think the advantage that something like Star Wars Rebels or The Bad Batch has to an older fan like me, and I won't include you guys as being older, but I'm just assuming you're
we are
a bit older than I am even, and because you said you were alive when the original came out, and I was born in '79, but so I think the Clone Wars focused on a lot of different characters. You had Anakin and Obi-Wan at the core, but then you were going to the clones and you were going to the dark side characters, and you were skipping around all over the place. By and large, Rebels and the Bad Batch, and even Resistance to a point, have focused on a core group of characters, and it allows me and the audience in general, I would say, to connect a little bit more as you're following these protagonists. Now, last week was an exception to that rule, because we did go and follow. I mean, Crosshair used to be a member of the Bad Batch, but it was focused on the Empire, and I really liked it for that. So maybe I'm contradicting myself here, but yeah, I would say that to me is the difference, and why I've been able, because like you, Matt, I had trouble connecting with the Clone Wars. I did feel like it was kind of scattershot, I think is a good word to describe it. But I have enjoyed the Bad Batch a bit more, just because you're able to really fixate on these this one core group of characters. But yeah, getting into this week's episode, let's talk about the plot before we really give our thoughts. How would you describe what happens in Faster to somebody who has not watched it yet?
Well, it starts with Hunter and Echo delivering, what are they called?
Nerf nuggets.
Nerf nuggets. Which we were debating exactly what that means. Is it nuggets for Nerf, like the creatures, or is it made of the Nerf creatures and it's like chicken nuggets and they're delivering them? So we couldn't figure that out.
Or is it manure pellets from the Nerf?
That could be it too.
Yeah.
It could be Nerf. Yeah, exactly. Like buffalo chips.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're off, and immediately that's where Jay and I both felt like you saw this mission start and you thought, oh boy, it's going to be one of these episodes. And Hunter really has had a very small presence in this season so far, which is surprising. Since he was so front and center on the first season.
He needs to get a hold of his agent.
He does. Exactly. Yeah. He's doing
the voice actor for Hunter must be so upset he's not getting enough to do on this show.
We were joking about D. Bradley Baker's probably like, can we just, I need to limit the number of voices I'm doing for every scene. Can you cut that back a little bit? So Sid's got a new mission, and Sid, she really like exploits them as far as what their skill set is, and kind of making gains for her. So she's like, you got to come with me to basically be my muscle, so that I can go to this planet, check out this racer that I've invested in called Teo, which another great droid. Freaking awesome droid. So he's so funny. And Ben Schwartz, you mentioned earlier, is the voice. He does such a great job.
I want to talk about how Teo moves, because I love the way his face kind of rotates in the casing on his head, and just all the little pistons moving around. I love the design of that droid. I kind of hope we get a Teo action figure at some point.
We have to. And it doesn't matter if he turns his back on you, because he can just flip his head over and still talk to you. So that's I like that feature. His arrogance, his attitude, his lines were funny. I just thought he was a great character. It was fun to watch him. But yeah, so Sid takes him to this planet, which we've not seen, and Jay and I were joking about that on our show. We're like, they keep adding new worlds, and there's somebody out there who is really focused on that galaxy map, and it's like, now where?
Yep.
Right.
Now where does this go? I don't know where.
You have to wonder how many total planets can there be, like are populated, habitable planets can there be in the Star Wars galaxy? Because I remember back when Galaxy's Edge opened at Disneyland, you had to get a reservation time to go and visit the land, and all the bracelets they were named after the name of a planet. Like each reservation period that you could have was a designation, was a different planet name, and some of them were planets I had never heard of, and I've been a big Star Wars fan for a long time. So it's kind of like alien species almost in Star Wars too, because it's like, how is there a finite number of these, or just like keep adding more and more planets?
Like, with characters, it's like, I don't know, does one have a horn coming out this way and something coming out his mouth? Okay, that's a new character. They always try to morph into new ones. There's a friend of ours who friend of the show, the Athorian historian, and he's always laser focused on having Athorians and stuff. So he loves Bolo in Bad Batch, which hasn't got a lot of play so far. But there's another creature that's so close to an Athorian, but it's not, and it just makes him irate. He's like, you had the creature, and then you had to make this other one that's just like a little slight offshoot. Why even bother? He gets so mad, it's hilarious.
That's great. Please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So Teo races. He's clearly good. But then they make this bet. What's the guy's name that shows up that's voiced by Ernie Hudson? I'm forgetting his name.
Let's see. His name is Grinny Malegi.
Malegi, yes. So he shows up, and clearly he and Sid have this past, and maybe some shady business in the past, it seems like. They've kind of were operating in the same circles and doing some shady business. And so they decide to make this wager on Teo versus, I'm forgetting the name now, Jet Venom, is that what it's called?
Jet Venom is the alien pilot,
which is such a great Star Wars name. It's just a prototypical Star Wars name. And so the race happens, and as you would expect, of course, there's some dirty play. I mean, the riot racing in general is funny, because when they walk up to see this racing, and we're originally thinking, oh, is it pod racing? Is that what it's going to be? It's similar, but it seems like it's very much a no holds barred, anything goes deal, and it's also more of like a contained track, place that they're operating in, those tunnels they go through, which were so cool visually. So it's a little bit different, the riot racing, than the pod racing, I would say.
Alex on Star Wars compared it to Mario Kart, which I thought was a very apt comparison, because like you said, you can shoot other racers with projectiles. There are alternate courses you can take that are slightly more dangerous, but they're shortcuts. So I like that comparison to Mario Kart.
Yeah, and so then they have that race, and they kind of double cross Teo and do this little claw and saw trick to him, and he just gets obliterated. And so obviously they're in I keep forgetting his name, Malegi.
Malegi, yes.
They're in Malegi's debt now, and so Omega continues to do this thing where she's like, well, we got to help. Like, there's no option. We've got to help Sid. So she wants to help everybody, and so she offers to double the bet essentially, and puts them in kind of a pickle. But the whole sequence of Tech fixing Teo was just comedy. It was so funny when he's like, where are my arms and legs? That guy just killed me.
Yeah, that's really Ben Schwartz bringing his sense of humor to the show. Yeah. I was wondering how much improv he was doing in his performance, because there's that one moment where he just yells his own name after his line. She's like, Teo. And I was wondering, is that something that was in the script, or is that Ben Schwartz?
No, I think you're probably right. There's a little bit of probably just Ben Schwartz hamming it up in the recording booth.
Yeah, a lot of third person references. Teo is an artist,
Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
So he puts him back together, and he's gonna go out and race. Then he's talking smack to Tech, because Tech's doing all this like data and research on how to run the race and all these different things. And he tells him, your Tech says your strategy is flawed, and he's like, oh, okay, and then just gets absolutely driven by somebody who comes through pit row and just crushes him. So,
and that guy just seems like totally nonchalant about having destroyed Teo.
Yeah,
he just kind of shrugs as he exits his speeder.
He kind of like rubs his shoulder, just walks out.
Right.
And then I love how Teo says, what I say, he said, Jay, is I have no regrets. So then and while this is happening too, I mean, Sid is in this like kind of perch, you know, this little suite or whatever you want to call it with Malegi, and they're having this conversation. He's like, you know, I can't remember the line because I had it written down, but it's something like hustlers like us, you know, like you're gonna betray these people at some point. They don't know the real you. So that's a big foreshadowing.
She thinks that she's changed, or she's letting him know that she has.
Right.
Yeah, but she's a survivor, and she's going to put herself in front of that match at some point, we would expect. So she's going to sell them out at some point, I would guess, later this season.
So in addition to that, we got some new information about Sid. I should mention we also learned her full name in this episode. Sidorin Scaleback is her name. Different from other Trandoshan characters like Bossk, the namesake of this podcast. I don't know. What did you guys think of that name?
When I saw you put the name in the notes, I thought, where did he get that? I don't remember seeing her name. And then I realized when I went back to watch the episode a second time, I was like, oh, he actually says it out loud.
He says it to her when he first approaches her.
It works.
And you know, like when you use a full name, you know, there's some history. Yeah, right.
Didn't use her middle name though.
No.
Well, now that we're talking about Sid, let's get into this discussion because we got a couple comments about Sid. When is will Sid gonna betray the Bad Batch? What you guys think? And Sid will betray the Bad Batch like Leandro. I don't get
Leandro Cressard betrayed Brighton and Hove to go to Arsenal. He this is a soccer reference because that's
a sports thing, so I'm not gonna understand it. But yeah, this probably my favorite.
Go home.
He probably is home.
I am home. So probably my favorite moment in this episode is the tail end where Ernie Hudson's character, let's see, I forgot it as well. Grinny Malegi says to Tech, Wrecker, and Omega, you know, watch your back.
Yeah.
Sid isn't necessarily going to reciprocate this loyalty that you've given to her. What do you guys think? Can we trust Sid in the long run? And I think this is kind of the way that this episode does tie into the larger overarching story.
Right. That's it's its own episode, but this is the thing that ties into the season going forward. And so, you know, it feels like we've run our course a bit with the Sid situation and arrangement. She said last season that, you know, like essentially said, like, you don't necessarily trust me because I'm, you know, like we're all kind of out for each other. She kind of made a reference to that. This season, she said it's only a matter of time before the Empire finds out about my gig and it's up. So there's an end coming this season to this arrangement of them doing these missions for Sid, I think. So I don't think she's going to do anything like really malicious toward them. I think she's just going to be put in a place where it's her or them, and she's going to pick herself, and they're going to get roast.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then she'll realize in order to right her wrong, she'll die.
Oh, redemption. Always redemption.
Get away. Yep.
Gotta have the redemption arc in Star Wars. There's no escaping it.
Of course.
So she kisses Wrecker before she dies.
She picks him up.
Just like with her brute strength, she just grabs him. Nothing he can do.
Any other moments or scenes from this episode that stuck out to you guys? Anything you particularly liked or did not care for?
Well, the only other thing I would say as far as likes really is that Tech has been kind of my favorite character of the batch, and it's been a lot of Tech this season. And he was definitely the MVP of this episode and has been for the season in general. So seeing him getting more exposure and more time and more, I mean, the fact that he's just kind of, like we joked about on our show, he's more robotic than Teo is, you know, the way he talks and the way he thinks and operates. But watching him in that race, the music that was playing, the visuals that they were seeing when you're going through it, it just was a really fun part of the episode. So even though there was a kind of a little bit of a slow build up to the eventual race, I thought once we got to that race, that was a pretty good payoff.
How about you, Jay? Anything stick out to you that we haven't talked about already?
No, I think we've covered it. Yeah. I mean, I would like to say you're right. Like we talked about Teo, and, you know, they keep creating these droids and then taking away. I mean, that's a character that I think could just hang out with the Bad Batch in episodes. In fact, bring him over, let him be the bartender, and put AZ on the team.
Yeah. AZ needs more work. AZ is very capable.
AZ had a brief cameo in this week's episode.
I know, but he was so great when we went back and rewatched season 1. I mean, he is heroic in season 1. He's done a lot, and he did a lot for Fives in Clone Wars. So the AZ's got a nice long track record of being, quite the hero.
Yeah, he wasn't saved from the depths of the ocean to go work at the freaking bar. Like, it just give this guy something to do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it did leave us. It did leave us thinking, Mike, and you may be going to this next too. Is just like, what's next? You know,
Right.
That was kind of what we were trying to figure out. Is are we going to do more of these missions, or are we going to do something else? You would think Hunter and Echo come back into play. I don't know that they would bounce back to the Empire necessarily, but it is good to kind of keep track of what's going on with them. I don't know. I'm real for the rest of the season. I'm real anxious to see where the Cody thing goes and the Rex thing goes. Like, do we get those two together with the Bad Batch and have some like great euphoric moment all of a sudden where they're all together fighting together? We need to know more about Omega. That whole thing that they left us with at the end of season 1, the Nala Se and the Mount Tantus stuff, like that's stuff that needs to be explored more. So there's a lot of stuff they still need to touch on. But again, we're only a quarter of the way through the season, so they do have time. And as I said earlier, I am looking forward to Admiral Rampart's death.
That would be good to see. Yeah, a full dozen episodes left to go in the Bad Batch season 2, so anything can happen. I do want to point out my favorite thing about this episode, and what I tend to enjoy about the Bad Batch overall, is you never know who's going to guest star, both familiar Star Wars characters and actors that you may be familiar with. I particularly like this episode because we got not only Ben Schwartz from Parks and Rec, who we've already talked about. I'm a big fan of his comedy. I think he's hilarious, and his voice acting is really entertaining. And then also from Ghostbusters, one of my other favorite franchises, Ernie Hudson, who just turned in a fantastic performance. You guys think we'll see this character, Grinny Malegi, again?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Because he kind of served his purpose of giving us the backstory on Sid. Maybe. I don't know. But you're right. I think the cameos are always an interesting thing. It's one of my favorite things to do when we go through is when I first watched the episode, I try to just watch the whole thing through the first time.
Yeah.
It's hard to not skip forward to the credits just to see, okay, who is that voice? Because this is going to drive me crazy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I do that. But it seems like every week it's somebody. Every week there's somebody we're like, oh, that's right. That's that person, you know? It's bizarre people that they bring in, and it's cool that they get all these voices. It'd be funny if it's like all of a sudden it's like Gene Hackman. He hasn't done anything in 20 years.
That would be a get. That would be a huge get. Okay. Anything else that you guys would like to say about this episode or the Bad Batch in general before we wrap up here?
I'm good.
Love the show in general. Like, even with the complaints that I have, like I think it's a strong series, and looking forward to the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, we were trying to kind of figure out how many seasons will this show go. You know, it's hard to say because there's a lot to be accomplished in season 2. But since there is a lot of tie over and other things that we're seeing, you could see it going on for another season or 2.
Yeah, and this is a big gap to fill in the larger timeline. I feel like we're just after the rise of the Empire, after Order 66. There's not a lot that happens in that first decade, right? Till we get to Obi-Wan Kenobi, Disney Plus series, and like Solo, the movie takes place around the halfway point between 3 and 4. So you've got some unexplored territory there. And then to me, the other question is always, well, what happens to these characters ultimately? Because we know we don't see the Bad Batch in the original trilogy era. We don't know if they're in the background somewhere or what they're up to at that point. So what's their ultimate fate? I guess is the other thing that has to be addressed.
Yeah, well, and yeah, you're right. I mean, this is an era I love. I love watching the Empire operate. But the other thing is, I thought, and I think I've seen people make reference to this, is so we've seen Cody now after so many years and so many different shows, and Cody finally comes back. Some have speculated, well, there was that whole rumor a while back that Cody was originally supposed to be part of the Kenobi series or movie or whatever. So if they do a second season of Kenobi, is that a potential crossover where we see Cody show up there? That would be kind of cool in live action.
I'm waiting once the Bad Batch wraps. They're going to go up a few more years, and it's going to be the next show will be called Omega Fett.
That's
the other thing that has to happen. We got to get a meeting between Omega and her brother, Boba Fett.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see. Okay, that's gonna
like Star Wars tradition where like they meet and they don't know their brother and sisters. Like there's a whole they fall in love for like an episode or two. Right?
Oh, no.
Sorry. I don't write the themes. I'm aware of them.
We know. We didn't know at the time when the original trilogy came out.
Even more uncomfortable. This time you're in on the joke.
Don't kiss her.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to bring us to the end of our discussion of the Bad Batch for this week, and to our final segment on Who's the Bossk. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is the new HBO series, The Last of Us. It is based on the video game series that's very popular that I have not played, but I did enjoy this pilot premiere episode of The Last of Us. It stars Pedro Pascal, the lead character from The Mandalorian. He plays Din Djarin on The Mandalorian. And all I could think watching this show is I want to take little audio clips of Pedro Pascal's character from The Last of Us and put them over video clips of The Mandalorian. There was one line where he's talking about how he doesn't like pancakes, and I thought that would just be really funny coming out of that helmet. There was a
hard to get it up the helmet.
Yeah. Right. There was a YouTube video probably decades ago, 15 years ago, with somebody did that with James Earl Jones. They just took James Earl Jones lines from other movies and put them over Darth Vader. It's so hilarious. So I think it would be great to do that with Mando as well. How about you guys? By the way, I recommend The Last of Us. It's a zombie show, post-apocalyptic zombie show on HBO. How about you guys? What have you been watching, reading, enjoying, playing, anything lately? Let's start with Matt.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty bad about keeping up with current shows other than Star Wars stuff because I'm so focused on making sure I'm watching that. But one thing we caught up on, my lady friend and I recently, was the Jack Ryan season 3.
Okay.
Was it? And that was fantastic. I'm a sucker for anything, any like kind of spy thriller stuff. I'm just a sucker for it. I'm not sure I totally loved the finale, but the whole season itself, I thought was great, and it's so entertaining. And then the other thing I was trying to catch up on was Letterkenny because I'm still on season 10. They just released season 11. That show is so stinking funny, and I absolutely love it.
The Jack Ryan show, is that with John Krasinski?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
It's John Krasinski, and it's got a great cast. It's obviously got a huge budget, and it's really well done. It's really entertaining.
And that's on Amazon Prime. Correct. Am I right about that? And
yes.
What's Letterkenny? I'm not familiar with that.
Letterkenny is a Canadian show. It's like these people that are they run a farm in like kind of a small town in Ontario. And I don't know how to describe the show properly, but it's just about the people of this small town and interacting, and they're all really quick-witted, and it just do some of the most ridiculous stuff in the world. It is pee your pants laughing entertainment. So if you ever want to go back, there's now 11 seasons of it.
Oh wow!
And it's on. I think it's on Hulu.
Did you watch?
Go ahead.
What was the spinoff show?
Shorzy. I haven't watched Shorzy yet either. Shorzy's a spinoff.
That's funny. Yeah, because I've only seen a couple of the Letterkennys because there's so much, but it was 6 episodes. So
his character's so good. I wondered if they could do a full series with him, but I think they probably pulled it off. It looks good. Jared Keesto is the guy who does the whole thing, and
you wouldn't know to talk about that on this show though, because it swears a lot.
A lot of swearing. Yeah,
it sounds right up my alley because you can't go wrong with Canadian humor. I'm a big Kids in the Hall fan, so this is
you love it. You would like it.
Okay, Jay, how about you? Anything you've been enjoying lately?
I watched The Last of Us. I thought it was great. I've never played the games, so I'm aware of enough of it, though. So I think they did a pretty damn good job with crossing over from one to the other. You can tell they have some money into that show, though. Like just the point perspective of her in the back seat watching the chase through the alleys, the plane coming down and crashing. I like the science behind it, that they're using the bacteria or the fungi, all of that. Like interesting. It looks like it's going to be. There's enough of the show in that first season. I'm sorry about the dog. That I think the season itself is just going to. There's so much that I can already tell. Like they're going to be able to play with. So I'm really interested to see where this goes. And having not played the game, they kind of have me from. I'm a newbie. Also, 1923. If you watch Taylor Sheridan stuff, I thought 1883 was absolutely amazing. One of the best Westerns I've seen in years. Great. Of course, talk about Harrison Ford. He's good in this. Like just seeing him, swagger and be on a horse. Different hat than Indy, but still works. Helen Mirren, she is something to watch in this as well. It's spectacular. So if you like the Yellowstone universe, go into this. It's great.
But not related to 1899. That's a different thing, right?
That's a Netflix Bermuda Triangle show, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that
no
that
way.
one I've seen. I haven't watched any of the Yellowstone stuff, but I do want to check that out too.
Yellowstone is kind of like I've heard people say it's like an R-rated Dallas from back in the day. It's
Yeah,
kind of what
it's
it is.
very much a soap opera. I couldn't get into it, but where 1883 and 1923 succeed is you don't have that soap opera feeling, you know. Once I got into the first season of Yellowstone, because I kept being told, you have to watch it, you have to watch it. I do enjoy it, but you're right, it's soap opera. Where 1883 is like dirty. It's grimy. What's the singer's name? Escapes me right now. Tim McGraw, is like he's a movie star. Like watching him carry that show from the minute he comes into it, because I mocked it. I was like, well, you know, what does Tim McGraw and Faith Hill have over Taylor that, you know, they got Polaroids of him or something? Because how was these country singers going to carry this show from like the biggest writer in television right now? And you're 5 minutes into it, you're like, oh, well, I mean, I see why they cast him. It's great. It's really, really good.
Cool. It's going on my list. So thank you for those recommendations. Yeah. And that's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Who's the Bossk. I want to issue a big thank you to Jay and Matt from A Certain Point Askew podcast. Where can people find the podcast, and where can people find you guys, Jay and Matt?
So we have a website, from a certain point askew.com. Our Twitter account, which is the best place to reach us, we do have a lot of interactions on there, is at FACPA pod. And you can also email us, facpapod@gmail.com. And we love the interaction. We love the feedback. We do giveaways whenever there's an active show going on. So we're doing like a Mando pulsar rifle, Nerf rifle.
I think I've got Matt talked into doing some images too. So listen to the latest episode, and you're going to hear.
I'm not doing
this next giveaway it's brilliant. I'm telling you, the marketing, our marketing is way better for FactPut than Disney's ever been with Star Wars.
But if you answer our question of the week and email us and write reviews and all that kind of stuff, you get entries. We kind of trying to generate interest in the show and all that, and interaction with the people who listen to the show. So please check us out. And then Jay, you can be found
at Judith Light's house recently.
What?
Who's the
mom
boss?
From Family Prison. Oh, no, okay.
That's a great reference.
I should have went with Alyssa Milano, Judith Light. I just watched the menu and she was in that. I was like, oh my God, she's alive still. Now, you can find me S7EVN Days of Geek. I have a whole bunch of podcasts. None of them are active right now, but FactPut's still going large. So find some of it. Yeah, we like the Twitter conversation. So please follow us and give the show a listen. You know what? You could always have one more Star Wars podcast in your library.
Right, there's not enough of them, right?
Yeah.
Well, you guys are so much fun. I'm going to definitely put your podcast on my regular rotation for my commute whenever I have to drive down to Orange County. So thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us. It's been great.
Yeah, this is fun.
Absolutely. And my name is Mike Celestino. Thank you out there for listening. As always, please visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. Next week on the show, more Bad Batch. It's going to be season 2, episode 5. And I'm sure we'll talk about that Willow behind the scenes special, which is coming up next week. So thanks again. See you soon. Bye.
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 I was going to let the world know that Jack Black was your guest next week, but
all right, let's end the stream.
Oh.